So for the last two mukbangies, I've decided to come outside. I'm gonna also record on here, so now it's unpaused. The last words I believe I said were top 3 myths of immigration myths. My citing was Immigration Myths Debunked, What Are Facts? Learn Liberty, 2011, Penn Powell, PhD. The number one myth, one myth is they're a drag in our economy. Immigrants are net beneficial to the economy. Economists who studied immigration, even economists who are otherwise critical of immigration, are in almost universal agreement. 2. Steal our jobs. When an immigrant comes in, it is obvious we see an American worker lose his job. But what we don't see is that creates another job for that American. 3. Depressed wages. More workers added to workforce does not add up to lower wages. The biggest reason for low wage job is people with no high school diploma in the U.S. In the U.S. Minimal effects on wage difference even then. And then I put a chart that was shown. It was like highly skilled, and then highly skilled, low skilled, and a circle representing U.S. laborers, and then there was a triangle, and then what are those things called? Like an hourglass shape of the immigrant at work, immigrant labor. Right? So he stated that, in simple terms, to put that both of us have, I said both of us, both immigrants and U.S. citizens have people in the criteria of not being skilled laborers. And, yeah. Okay. So the next one is Japanese concentration camps in America. My citation for this was Japanese American internment camps explained, 2014, by Mr. Heat. Here's my citation. So World War II caused anyone in the U.S. to be looked at suspiciously. Japanese Americans had always faced racism and discrimination for nearly 100 years now. Many Americans thought Japanese Americans might be more loyal to Japan than the U.S. after the attack. Paranoia of the Japanese, essentially. February 19th, 1942, Roosevelt signed an executive order 9066. It ordered the roundup of 120,000 Americans of Japanese ancestry to one of the 10 concentration camps, which were officially called, quote, relocation camps. A lot of them had no idea where they were being sent. There was rations of food quality, inadequate medical care for adults and children. Adults could work for $5 a day. Guards shot people who tried to leave. They could leave the camp if they enlisted in the army. January 2nd, 1945, the executive order canceled camps. Last term remained open until early 1946. Not much compensation given after. I don't remember if they said it was like $30 given after. And then even so, when they went back to their homes, like some of them were trashed. I believe at that point some of them were even like taken. Then we have the Santee Sioux mass execution by Abraham Lincoln, aka Dakota Uprising. And my source was the largest mass hanging in American history, the Sioux War of 1862, Jacked History 2025. The Sioux people are an ethnic group that's historical land stretches from modern Minnesota to Montana in the west, Nebraska in the south, and bleeds into southern Canada around Manitoba and Saskatchewan in the north. Sioux translates to enemy of the Ojibwe. Ojibwe? I forgot how to say it. I forgot how to pronounce it. There are 3 groups within the tribe: Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota. August 17th, 4 teens went scavenging, stumbled upon some eggs. Teens started to dare each other to go up to Jones's door. Sooner or later, one of them did and demanded food. Jones said let's do a shooting contest, essentially. And in the event, one of the boys shot James fatally shot James. Of course, his wife came out, tried to see what the dilemma was, and she was also shot. And along with their 15-year-old adopted daughter, they ran. Told Little Crow. Little Crow said, "Let's give them to the authorities." Other tribe heads, specifically younger tribe heads, won blood. I would assume this also stems from their petitions for food getting denied. August 18th, Little Crow and a small army of Dakota warriors had surrounded and began to attack the Lower Sioux Agency. 20 government workers and traders were killed during the fight while trying to flee. Andrew Mick got mutilated and grass was shoved in his mouth. He was one of the main traders who denied Dakota food and money lending up to the events. He made a comment to them saying, "Let them eat grass and dung." 60 plus individuals made their way to nearby Fort Ridgely, where Captain John Marsh and about 50 men organized a counter-offense. Marsh and men were ambushed. Half of them died, including Marsh drowning in Minnesota River. Young Dakota warriors were out of control, going against tribal leaders and Little Crow. By September 26th, Little Crow and the remaining followers had escaped into southern Canada. Thousands of Dakota were taken into custody, many whom had nothing to do with the uprising. 400 military trials. Out of the 400, 303 were found guilty, sentenced to death. Little to no representation. A lot didn't know English, and the court did not bother to explain to the charges or court proceedings. There were 40 court hearings a day. Alexander Ramsey pleaded to Lincoln that if he hung all the convicted, he would secure more votes for the upcoming re-election. Lincoln said, "I could not afford to hang men for votes." December 26, 1862, 3 months later, Sioux uprising ended. 38 men were hanged in front of a crowd of thousands. Little Crow was killed, body mutilated by 2 Anglo settlers 6 months later in July 1863. Then we're going into thought-terminating cliché. My citation for this is Thought-Terminating Cliché, The Hidden Language of Control, Cali Sourcing 2025. What they are: short, familiar phrases that stop your thinking in its tracks. Stop the conversation, dismiss your emotion, leave no room for question, flatten the complex reality of life. So, for that one, and kill dialogue before it even starts. Erode the connection to your own clarity and truth. Examples are when people say, "Don't overthink it." You're in your ego. Boys will be boys. Trust the process. Man up. Let's not dwell on the past. You're too emotional. It's always been done this way. You're being reactive. They shift the blame. It's raining right now. Next one is us versus them thinking, social identity theory. My source was Social Identity Theory, the Science of Us versus Them, Opinion Science 2021. Dr. J. Van Bavel had said to change this way of this way of thinking is changing the way we think about ourselves from me to we. Social identities are the social identities are the parts defined by the groups we belong to. There's two types. In groups, there are groups you belong to, who you are essentially, hometown, religious affiliation, school. Out-groups, groups we don't belong to, essentially others. Self-esteem from our social identities. We use our group's success to fuel our own self-esteem. I'm a good person, so this is a good group. I wouldn't be in a bad group. The result is in-group favoritism and out-group derogation. In-group favoritism, bias to see our group positively. Out-group derogation, bias to see other groups negatively. Moving on to repetition of talking points. Repetition emphasizes a point. Studies show how it makes your message more believable. Worth repeating. How to hammer home your point. Written by Peter Watts. There was no date. My next one is fear-based persuasion. How fear tactics work in persuasive communication. Todd Stewart, 2017. Technique that motivates action, highlighting the negative consequences of failing to comply. Spiritual psychosis, non-clinical term describing a state where a person experiences psychosis such as hallucinations, delusions, but interprets these symptoms through a spiritual or religious lens. And my source was What is Spiritual Psychosis? Exploring Symptoms and Treatment, BetterHelp Team, 2020. Oh, actually there was no. BetterHelp editorial team, and it was updated in 2026. Logical fallacies, flaws in reasoning that weakens an argument. And my citing was Thou Shalt Not Commit Logical Fallacies, written by Jesse Richardson, Andy Smith, Sam Meaden, and Flip Creative, 2026. Page Act of 1875. This law prohibited the recruitment of the U.S. of unfree laborers and women for immoral purposes, but was enforced primarily against Chinese. ImmigrationHistory.org, 2019. People versus Hall, 1854, is a landmark California Supreme Court decision that overturned the murder conviction of a white man, George W. Hall. The court ruled that the Chinese Americans and immigrants could not testify in court against white citizens, effectively stripping non-white residents of legal protections against white individuals. United States versus Wong Kim Ark, 1898. Affirmed birthright citizenship to anyone born in our country, including these born to immigrant parents. CAP. My computer. Anyway. Well. CAPAC.gov, 2025. Haitian Revolution and the mistreatment of Haiti from other countries. 1791 to 1804. Oh, yeah, that's itchy. Defeated the French Empire, abolished slavery, and shook the foundation of the Atlantic slave economy. The Haitian Revolution. There was no date. It was the OER project. They faced severe exploitation and interference from foreign powers. World's first free black republic, global powers isolated the nation. France forced Haiti to pay a crippling indemnity for lost property, essentially slaves. And U.S. occupied it for decades, extracting gold and wealth. How the U.S. and France ruined Haiti, 2025 video, Bianca Granulol. White Citizens Council, WCC, in response to the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision ending school segregation, white segregationists throughout the South created the White Citizens Council. These local groups typically drew a more middle or upper class membership than the Ku Klux Klan, and in addition to using violence and intimidation to counter civil rights goals, they sought to economically and socially oppress blacks. And I got that from Stanford University, and there was no date. Confessional rhetorics of disability in the church. Okay. The intersection of disability and the church rhetorics explores religious language and doctrine interpret marginalized or liberate disabled bodies. Historically, the church has relied on flawed models equating disability with sin or portraying it as an object for pity, but emerging theologies center on inclusive belonging and egalitarian communion. I got this information from Harold Braswell, age 2013, Reclaiming the Faith, Disability Studies Quarterly, 33, parentheses 2, and then I put the whole HTTPS at the bottom. Then we have Native American assimilation schools. Federal Indian boarding schools were institutions established from 1819 through the 1960s to forcibly assimilate indigenous children into white American culture, driven by the philosophy to kill an Indian, save the man. The U.S. government systematically stripped hundreds and thousands of Native American children of their languages, religions, and cultural identities. I got this information from boardingschoolshealing.org. There was no date. Hernandez versus Texas, 1954. P. Hernandez, an agricultural worker, was indicted for the murder of Joe Espinosa by an all-Anglo white grand jury in Jackson County, Texas, claiming that Mexican Americans were barred from the jury commission that selected juries. Hernandez's attorney tried to quash the indictment. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals found that Mexicans are, and it was written like this, Mexicans are ... members of and within the classification of the white race, are distinguished from members of the Negro race, and rejected the petition, arguing they were special case under the meaning of the 14th Amendment. And then I have Hernandez versus Texas, Oyez, www.oyez.org, and then I have everything cited here. I wrote the whole www. You'll find it too. Then I have Mendez versus Winchester. Mendez versus Winchester, 1947, was a landmark federal civil rights case that ruled the segregation of Mexican American students in California public schools was unconstitutional. It served as a vital legal precedent for Supreme Court's historic Brown versus Board of Education ruling 7 years later. U.S. Courts.gov is where I got my information. Groupthink is a psychological phenomenon when a group of well-intentioned individuals make irrational or non-optimal decisions. Psychology Today, written by Kaja Perina, June 5th, 2026. Gender hierarchies, a social system where one gender is afforded more power, authority, and social value than another. I got that from sksagepub.com, written by Deshiti Majan, and there was no date. Public executions and lynching. While legal public executions were common in colonial America and the early 19th century, as moral deterrents, lynchings, extra legal. The early 19th century, as moral deterrents, lynchings, extra legal, white supremacist mob murderers used to terrorize black people after the Civil War. Both were often treated as public spectacles. I got this from the NAACP.org. There was no exact date. And then we go into the description of disinformation. Disinformation is false information which is deliberately intended to mislead, intentionally misstating facts. This information is entirely fabricated. Misinformation. False or inaccurate information, getting the facts wrong, combating misinformation, and promoting misinformation, false or inaccurate information, getting the facts wrong. It's accidentally done. And I got my information from Combating Misinformation and Promoting Psychological Science Literacy 2024. Malinformation weaponizes the truth. It is genuine fact information that is deliberately manipulated, taken out of context, or exaggerated to mislead an audience and cause harm. And I got this information from PrincetonLibrary.org. And I did write each state's reason for secession. Secession? When they left, basically. So for South Carolina, December 20th, 1860, first to secede, citing Northern hospitality towards slavery, the election of a president hostile to slavery, and the failure of Northern states to enforce Fugitive Slave Act. Mississippi, January 9th, 1861, declaring that their position was identified with the institution of slavery, citing a heavy reliance on the labor systems and Northern attempt to destroy it. Florida, January 10th, 1861, argued that a Republican victory threatened their domestic institutions, slavery, and sought to maintain the white supremacist foundation of their society. Alabama, January 11th, 1861, cited the election of sectional candidates whose platform was built on abolition of slavery. Georgia, January 19th, 1861. While taking a more measured legal tone, Georgia explicitly detailed grievances regarding federal overreach concerning slavery and the northern states' refusal to return escaped slaves. All right. Then we have Louisiana, January 26, 1861, did not issue a detailed list of causes alongside its ordinance, but acted largely in solidarity with other lower states to protect its agriculture and slave-based economy. Texas, February 1st, 1861, explicitly declared it was establishing a government based on the subjugation of African Americans and accused northern states of failing to fulfill their constitutional duties to protect the slave trade. Virginia, Virginia, April 17th, 1861. The first upper state to secede after bombardment of Fort Sumter. They cited Lincoln's call for troops to suppress the rebellion as a violation of state sovereignty. Arkansas, May 6, 1861. Seceded after the federal government called for troops, viewing it as unconstitutional coercion against the slave-holding states. North Carolina, May 20th, 1861. Delayed seceding for months, but ultimately left after Lincoln called for troops, condemning federal intervention in state powers. Tennessee, January 8th, 1861, refused to initial calls for military force and seceded to stand with the other southern states against perceived federal tyranny. And then I got my information from the Reason for Secession, a documentary study, October 3rd, 2023. Social norms, the unwritten rules and shared expectations that guide acceptable behavior within a group or society. Social norms, ebsco.com. Lauden Laura L. 2019. Mores versus folkways. Folkways are everyday customs, traditions, and etiquette that guide polite, routine behavior, whereas mores are strict moral norms that dedicate a society's standards of right and wrong. I got that from Open Oregon, Pressbooks.pub. Chanel Sanchez, 2019. Cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort experienced when holding two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, values, and or behavior contradicts your fundamental beliefs. I got this from Aronson Elliott, Theory of Cognitive Dissonance, a Current Perspective, Advances in Experimental Social Psychology, Volume 4, ed. Leonard Berkowitz, New York Academic, 1969, 2-34 print. Pseudoscience, beliefs, theories, practices that are claimed to be scientific or factual but are incompatible with the scientific method. What is pseudoscience? 2024. Social Science Explainer. That's my citing. Historical memory, how groups, societies, and a nation construct narratives about the past. I got this from stlaw.edu. And then we have collective memory refers to process through which groups consolidate individual memories into a shared narrative, shaping their identity and collective experience. Walker Catherine, 2019, absco.com. Social memory describes how groups share and preserve the past to form their collective identity and how individuals recognize and remember each other. I got this from study.com. Benita Wari, no date. Public memory, how a group of people, like a nation or a community, collectively remembers and interprets the past. Sage reference, Roger C. Aden, and there was no date. Pseudo-history, literally and rhetorically myths, while based on real historical events. They distort the biases of scientific authority and foster unwarranted stereotypes, pseudoscience and pseudo-history. Alchin Douglas, 2004. Pseudo-historical narratives are accounts of the past that claim to be factual but distort, fabricate, or ignore established evidence. Pseudo-history, Sheeposh, Richard, 2025, ebsco.com. It's dark outside. Media literacy is the critical thinking skill required to access, analyze, evaluate, and create media. And I got this information from MediaLiteracyNow.org 2025. How do cults operate? My source was Cogito What Are Cults 2020 video. Cults operate by using psychological coercion and manipulation to establish total control over members' lives, typically revolving around a single charismatic leader. They function through a systematic cycle of recruitment, isolation, and mind control. And I believe that one was the last one for this one. Yeah, that was the last one for this one. And the next one I need to do is just the religious rhetoric, which is this one. But I think I will get back into that one a little later or tomorrow, depending. But we did good.